The ultimate Summoner Necromancer guide from level 1 to 90. Haven't reached 100 yet. I've played 200 hours of Necromancer so far with all the different builds. And I'm going to share the 1 to 50 level pass skill by skill, a complete Paragon board breakdown for the area 50 to 90. And most important, also items, aspects, and what stats to look for as the Necromancer. And yes, heads up, you can take this all the way to level 100 in your own pace. 1 to 50 skill breakdown. You're going to begin with bone splinters and enhanced bone splinters. That's going to phase out over time. You just need it in the very beginning as you don't have super essence production on the corpse explosion yet. Now you have two choices to make with your skills. You could start with bone spear because that gives you some more tempo until level 20. And then we would swap over to blight or sever. You could also just straight up start with sever because it's kind of really funny to have these specters flying out of your scythe as your opponents and sever your way around. I personally do prefer blight. But as we want to be feeling as good as possible in the very beginning, Bone Spear is truly what you want to use, but only level 20. And I'll tell you why you swap then. With Enhanced Bone Spear and Supernatural Bone Spear, plus 1 point in Hood Flesh already, that there's a chance to actually make corpses. Your lucky hit will be low in the beginning, but the chance to make bonus corpses is always good. Also regarding the Book of the Dead, we'll come to that after we went through the skills, and I'll tell you what to take at which level. The first important one is Corpse Explosion. Detonating corpses for free. Yes, Corpse Explosion actually doesn't cost essence, and with Grim Harvest here behind me, you're going to be making essence as you explode corpses, and as you explode corpses, you're also going to increase your damage by 3%. We don't need bonus damage in the early game. So you leave that note open right now. You could increase the radius here, but that's also not what we're looking for because everything is standing close enough. We'll come to that around level 20-ish. What we're actually going to do is we're going to straight up push skeletons to make them just more durable and not to have to resummon them all the time. That makes it just feel very good. You have a free essence production now with which you can spam your Bone Spear or your Blind. We've spent 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 points so far. Now let's spend another 9 and then actually get rid of Bone Spear. Down here, the first thing you're going to take is Decrepify. It's actually quite a nice thing because Decrepify slows your opponents and they deal less damage. So everything of you actually survives more. It's not that important in the early game if we're honest with each other, but Decrepify also has a chance to stun enemies now. So if you put Decrepify on with the corpse explosions and everything, being able to stun something or to fill up the stagger bar against bosses is quite nice. And then on top of that, Decrepify can also reduce your cooldowns. Now that is at this point quite useless, but not in the next 2 levels. So this is a preparation for the next 2 levels. As we're going to go for 1 in Skeleton Mastery, 1 in Skeleton Mage Mastery as well. And then here, Rejoice, I learned this. Yes, it was a hard learning process. We're finally going to pick up Corpse Tendrils. Corpse Tendrils are incredibly good. They pull everyone together. They get everyone in one spot, so your Corpse Explosion is even more efficient. And on top of that, Corpse Tendrils slows the enemies and makes them vulnerable, increasing your damage by 20% straight away, plus whatever vulnerable multiplier you have on your thing. Now, with all these points, we would have reached level 20. And here it is now time to slowly start swapping things. Because with a Corpse Tendril, we're finally able to pull everything together. And that is amazing. Because as we're able to pull everything together, now we can put our next point into Blind to abolish the Supernatural Bone Spear, get 1 more in Enhanced Blind, abolish the Enhanced Bone Spear, and then go for Blight can immobilize. And that is really cool because you're going to pull things together. You can Corpse Explosion them, but as you pull things together, if you launch Blight in there, they'll actually be stuck and rooted to the place. Skill rotation, very simple. You want to start with Decrepify or Blight to straight up be able to actually reduce your cooldowns as you use something. We're throwing in the Blight here to get some initial corpses procced, and as you can see, straight up followed up with the Decrepify for the cooldown reduction. What the initial Blight does is it's going to help me to produce some corpses that I can use the Corpse Tendrils, because that's essentially what we want to do. There's the forced corpse now spawned, and we can essentially straight up use Corpse Tendrils to pull everything together. And then we follow up with a Moth of Corpse Explosion spam, increase the damage of our minions, and worst case scenario, if it would get stunned or CC'd in any way, Blood Mist to get out of trouble. And then boom, boom. This is obviously now for a smaller mob without elites, plenty easy. But if that was an elite mob, you kind of continue with the whole rotation. Here's the next one. Again, you can start with a curse, wait for a corpse to be created by anyone, then get your corpse tendrils in, start with a corpse explosion as soon as the tendrils pull everything together, and in the middle, completely obliterate them. Rinse and repeat. In between, never forget every 5 seconds to actually put your minions on to get that 20% bonus damage. And you can kind of see like a nice little green bar running down here as you use it. So there's a bunch of elites spawning, and you can essentially use corpse tendrils. Everything gets together. Then with the Decrepify, your corpse tendril cooldown goes super low, and you're essentially always going to use your corpse tendril cooldown as soon as possible as it is available, because it gives you that bonus crit and bonus everything just nicely adding together. And that will, from this point on, only get more interesting. We to put the point out of Bone Spear as well, as we put everything into blind, and then we can actually move all the way down to now go also for corpses give us Fortify. But not only corpses give us Fortify, radius increase, and Blighted Corpse Explosion. Blighted Corpse Explosion being in this case very important because you don't want your Corpse Explosion to go off once. You want to pull people together with Corpse Tendrils. You want to then put them into a pool of shadows, and then you want to root them into the pool of shadows even harder. Meanwhile, with the Decrepify that you put on, you're going to reduce the cooldown of your Corpse Tendrils to spam that even more often, all the while your skeletons just pounding into the opponent. We need one more point to reach the ultimate here right now. Perfect. That's going to be Skeletal Mage Mastery. That is level 24, and you have your class so far set up with every skill you need. Your skill list should look following. We have Decrepify, followed up by Corpse Explosion into Corpse Tendrils with the Skeleton Mastery. Now here, you will have Blood Mist in the long run, which we don't have right now. And that's cool. You can actually put the Golem there. And then last but not least, you have the Blight to shoot out. The Golem will get sacrificed in the long run because the Corpse Tendrils are just more efficient than the Golem itself. And there is the Blood Mist. We don't skill the Blood Mist in the first 24 levels because we truly don't actually need it. Also, for your skeletons, you have a couple of choices. Mostly, you're going to go for Reapers because Reapers have a chance to make bonus corpses, more destruction, more devastation, more chances to use Corpse Tendrils and Corpse Explosion. You could technically also make an additional Skirmisher. Then for the mages, there's only one choice. Shadow doesn't seem to work the way you want to, and it's actually not stacking the Shadow Blight key passive. But what you want to is produce bonus essence. And the cool thing about bonus essence with the cool mages is not only can your cool mages freeze your opponents and actually crowd control them to give you more damage against crowd control, that chill also works great to stagger bosses so that bosses are actually getting the blue bar filled up and you do even more damage to them. No, they refill your essence continuously, and that's the best part because you sometimes need essence to just spam away that blight like a madman. For the Golem, you can go for either the Super Taunter with making more corpses, but best case scenario, you would actually go for stun into even more vulnerable, and that would create an infinite vulnerable chain because you could pull Corpse Tendrils together, you can Golem stun, you can Corpse Explosion into them, meanwhile have Decrepify as your starter, reduce the cooldown of Tendrils, and also Golem. And all the while your skeletons are just pounding into your opponent. Beautiful. Now that's only level 24 and you already feel fantastic, and we haven't even maxed out our damage yet because we just arrived down here at the ultimate tab. And as you might have noticed, I have all the skill slots taken, and that's simply because we're not planning to actually put any point in any ultimate. Yes, Bone Storm is good. Army of the Dead is completely useless. I'm sorry to say that, even with the right aspects. And the Blood Wave just stinks. Down here, you have quite some cool shiznit. And that's the first point into Inspiring Leader, because that is a gain of bonus attack speed. And that just works absolutely amazing. That gets followed up by your Priest healing now for 20% of their max life. And you can also have your minions not lose more than 60% of their maximum health with one single hit. That's kind of like cool because your minions can't just get smacked out of existence. Now, we can discuss about Hellbent Commander. I personally catch myself not ever being close to my minions, And that's why the 10x increase of damage does not seem to be that much worth it. That has been my personal experience so far. If you notice you're continuously standing into your minions, it might be time to actually check some points into Hellbent Commander. That being said, your minions at this point are actually very good already because we have put the 3 points into Skeletal Mastery and also this 3 points into Skeletal Warrior Mastery. Most important is that, again, you don't actually need to go for all the fancy-pantsy damage multipliers that early because you do enough damage. I mean, 3% in the beginning to like 100 damage is not as much as 3% to 1,000 or 10,000 damage. That's where it gets really interesting. What we want to do is we want to spend 7 points now to really make us transition smoother through everything. And there is a simple thing you can knock down here. First, we're going to go for Reaper's Pursuit for movement speed. Now you would say, oh yeah, when you damage enemies with darkness skills, they take 2% increased shadow damage from you and your minions for 2 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. That's 6% where it's useless in the beginning. Again. But what is cool, darkness skills have up to a 15% chance to stun an enemy. That's quite nice, being able to just outstun your opponent straight away. And then again, terror is also bonus damage that you don't really need in the first 30 levels that much. It's all for the later on. What's good though is if you actually increase the amount of corpses that can be spawned on your targets, especially on bosses. And also we might be at the point now where Blood Mist makes sense taking. Again, we're around level 30. I prefer Blood Mist later on for Nightmare Dungeons, and I didn't really need it to beat the campaign. That being said, if you pick up early the aspect to explode corpses with Blood Mist, you could put a point straight up in here and then get rid of your Golem. I know it sounds like I'm saying Golem, but I'm saying Golem. Golem. If you sacrifice the Golem, by the way, so as soon as you pick up Blood Mist, you go for increased critical strike damage. That doesn't do that much yet, but later as you pick up the right aspect, it's fantastic, and it's a nice little stack. Then the Golem goes out for Blood Mist. Now we're here at level 30. 4 more points needed for the key passive, for the thing that's going to change everything. Now we already have the Blood Mist. Fantastic. We're not going to go for the Overpower or the Corpse yet. That's for the later game. We can put 1 in Fueled by Death because simply we're going to continuously be consuming corpses. So this is the perfect situation where you're going to be having 3% bonus damage, not much, but you're consuming corpses all the way. Now, I would put 2 points here into Hood Flash because you never want to run out of corpses. This is your main thing, to continuously have corpses for your Corpse Explosion. And yes, we'll put some points later into Corpse Explosion for bonus damage. But again, at these level ranges, damage is not really and never has been your issue to get through things. Like 1 point in everything is more than enough to have you have a smooth transition. And as we get to level 33, we can pick up the pace slightly. I'm going to put 1 point into Amplified Damage because you continuously have your opponents curse. So that's 3% bonus damage just because of cursing them. And then down here, we're not going to pick up Kellen's Edict. Now, as much as this is a minion board, after you've not taken damage in the last 3 seconds, your minions gain 15% increased attack speed is useless. This is not a multiplier, this is additive. It's plus 15% on top of what you already have. So if you have 10 items that add movement speed on top, that's just plus on top to that and doesn't multiply everything. If it was multiplying, it would be good, but you also have to take 3 seconds no damage. That's laughable. You're always going to take 1 stray shot, and as soon as you take a stray shot, your ultimate doesn't work anymore. And that's where we're going to go for the Shadow Blight key passive, because this one affects enemies with Shadow Blight as you do shadow damage. And then you and your minions do 10% multiplicative increased damage. So all your damage gets multiplied by 10, not added by 10. And then every 10th attack you actually do any kind of shadow damage, you trigger the Shadow Blight key passive damage. And that's going to be a bop, which can crit, which gains advantage from vulnerable, crowd controlled, stunned, whatsoever, all the things you kind of do. And that can escalate into absolutely extreme damages. And here's where truly the whole class changes with the beautiful Blighted Corpse Explosion and the Blight together going super good in tandem. Now that we have the Shadow Blight key passive and our shadow damage essentially ramps up and escalates, you kind of notice, okay, we have this triggering every X due to the shadow damage. Now we can have an escalating more shadow damage and more shadow damage against slowed. Yes, we continuously slow with the Decrepify. We continuously stun and slow with Corpse Tendrils. Perfect. Now we do more damage and then even more damage if the 2 status conditions apply. That'd be level 37. We have 22 points left to spend. Now you could say, Pony, why don't you make more essence with Grim Harvest? And the thought is, no, you don't, because your mages actually produce enough essence for you and you do never run out of that. What you can do now is you can ramp up all your damage. Now, I would love to just ramp up my shadow damage here because it's a stacking one, and that is with Gloom. Gloom is cool because it's 2%, but that's 3 times. That's 6%, then it's 4% 3 times, and then it's 6% 3 times. So this is the biggest stack of damage you kind of have. And that one also gets followed up back here with Fueled by Death. These are your biggest damage stacks, and we've reached level 41. With 41, you're getting close to some of the more endgamey bosses as you're going chill through the campaign and not just pushing for the end. And that's where I generally recommend ramping up Death Defense by 2 points, so your minions can't just get clapped out of life anymore. Followed up by Inspiring Leader, because it's nice to have a bonus attack speed on yourself and your minions, because that will allow your cult mages to just make even more essence for you and allow you to spam your abilities more. And yes, you never need more than 1 point actually in your healing priest, because they cannot lose more than 30% of their maximum life with 1 hit, and you heal every 5 seconds 20%. It kind of carries each other out and is enough to really keep everyone alive. We have 14 points left, and why do you are level 45 with 14 points left? Because you obviously picked up all the points from your renown as you have been leveling up with the Lilith statues. Have you done that? Check d4planner.io, press the 3 dots interactive map, and here you will have a full interactive map that shows you every statue of Lilith, so you don't miss a single one out as you're grinding through the campaign. Now with 5 levels away, you're going to be facing some of the nastier bosses in the end game, and you're going to be looking forward to the capstone dungeon on level 50. And I have to say, I've died 1 single time in the whole campaign as a Summoner Necromancer and had 0 problems with any boss. And I died against the guy that explodes on death. Yeah, you know what boss I talk about if you get to that point, and you're going to be fuming as well. Goddamn, that big mother trucker took me down. Now, we're going to put 2 more points in Terra, because that really multiplies our damage by another 18%. If they're slowed, and if they're stun/immobilized, it's just working perfect, and we have everything to slow, immobilize, stun, freeze, chill. All the things above working together in tandem. 2 more points go into amplify damage, so that's 9% against cursed enemies, just really getting that even further. Now with your last 10 points, you want to just slam some into Corpse Explosion, but before I would get Enhanced Blood Mist and Ghastly Blood Mist for the bonus of making actually corpses with your Blood Mist as you're Blood Misting around. And again, if you're getting the Blood Mist Corpse Explosion aspect, that's going to be better the sooner you get it. And no, we don't need bonus points in Blind. The next 5 points are going to slam straight into Corpse Explosion to make this deal even more damage than it has ever dealt before. In the last 4 points, you have 2 choices now. You could either increase your damage dealt to distant enemies, which is a multiplicative one and it works really nice, or you could reduce the damage taken from close enemies and deal also more damage to close enemies. That being said, you're mostly standing far away. And here we're coming back to Hellband Commander. If you really catch yourself being close to your minions, an X 30% increase to their damage is going to be more than a 12% increase to your damage in the long run, in the grand scheme of things. And yes, we don't need more than 1 point in Necrotic Carapace because 2% is enough and we're making enough corpses continuously anyways. So if you really want the Hellband Commander, that is perfect. Go for it. Otherwise, you can either go for Death Reach or for Death Embrace, however you feel like that you're actually being closer to your opponents. And with the last point left over, you can boost your movement speed a little bit further if you don't want to lag behind your friends. Or you can even take a bonus stun to 2 seconds, because then Corpse Tendrils pulls everything together, and afterwards Blight and Blighted Corpse Explosion each have a chance to stun your opponents, while Blight also can immobilize your opponents and root them in place, and your skeletons are chilling and freezing everyone, also standing in the middle. So they just get stuck. Now we're level 50 with all our points taken. We have arrived at World Tier 3 because you beat the Capstone Dungeon on first try with this build. 0 issues. Let's get to itemization and what you're looking for. We're going to go through aspects and then the skills you actually want to take. Plus, I'll then go down the whole Paragon board. I'll also leave notes in here where I kind of like explain again what stats you wanted to have on each item. Most important thing is you're going to get used to a main hand and an offhand. because every weapon in this game has an intrinsic stat. Intrinsic stats are the ones below the damage. You see 1143 damage per second, and then it gives you plus 15% lucky hit. This size gives me life on kill. This one also lucky hit. The sword gives you critical strike damage. And you're currently looking for lucky hit chance because that works with reducing your cooldown for corpse tendrils, so you can spam that even more. And that is extremely good for the whole build. Also, an offhand will actually get you cooldown reduction on top of that with cream and cheese. And you can have maximum minion life on your offhand. That's what you really, really want. The two most important aspects for the whole skeleton thingy: on the helmet, your maximum number of skeleton mages increased by 2. You could put that on an amulet, but on an amulet, it really does feel bad. That gets followed up by the chest with the maximum amount of skeletal warriors increased. So we have more warriors, we have more mages right now. Fantastic. And that gets followed up by the boots as you pick the next aspect up. And keep in mind with the aspects, you don't need them to get level 50. I got my first aspect around level 36, and it wasn't actually some I needed. You can get level 50 without any of these aspects. These are the ones that you pick afterwards as you do Helltide zones, Legion events, and Nightmare dungeons to get your equipment together and to get all your aspects together. And by the way, these are the holy trinity where to get your equipment. If you want to in detail know how to progress from 50 to 100, there's a video linked in the description below as well. The boots are going to get one of the coolest aspects ever, the Cold Bringer. Every 10 seconds, your skeletal mages cast a blizzard that deals X cold damage and continuously chills enemies. You have a bonus of up to 3,000 damage later, and that with 5 skeletal mages. Quite cool, just having like passively more damage without even doing a single thing. Now we came to the ones where your damage ramps up, and that's on the weapon, the aspect of the Grasping Veins. Gains 20% in the max roll, increased critical strike chance for 6 seconds when you cast Corpse Tendrils. Cool. That brings your 20% critical strike chance up to 40% roughly. And you deal 60% bonus critical strike damage to enemies damaged by Corpse Tendrils. And keep in mind, shadow damage over time can't crit. But, very important, your Blight has an initial damage that can crit. Your Corpse Explosion has an initial damage that can crit up to 800,000, by the way, with all the amplifiers we're running. And also, the Shadow Blight key passive is not shadow damage over time, it's a proc, and that proc can crit as well. Now, in your tooltip later on, it will reach something around 2,000, 2,500 damage. With the right things we're using, it can crit for up to 50,000, 100,000 damage just randomly. So while you're doing your damage, you have your Shadow Blight key passive just ramping up damage continuously as it keeps proccing from all the things you're doing. Straight beautiful. Which brings me to the offhand and actually the right thing you want to have, and that's for your Shadow Blight key passive, the aspect of Decay. And also the Blighted aspect. The offhand gets the Blighted one, and that is you deal 120% increased damage for 6 seconds after the Shadow Blight key passive damaged enemies 10 times. And that happens so fast, the bigger the mob packs get. As you pull together 20 mobs in a Nightmare dungeon later, Helltide area, whatsoever, this gets stacked up in a milliseconds, and every single damage point you deal is increased by 120%. That's not all of it though, because there's a second one, and that was the aspect of Decay. And each time the Shadow Blight key passive deals damage, so each time it actually triggers, it gets increased by 40%, and that stacks up to 5 times. That means every single Shadow Blight key passive that triggers on each opponent, and that's the thing, you have 10 opponents, on 10 opponents that triggers 1 time, it has its damage increased by 200%. Yes, 200% here, multiplicative, together with 120% damage increase in total. So you increase 2,000 by 200%, by 120%, plus the 9% you have, plus the 18% bonus you have, plus the... Yep, that ends up like escalating extremely fast, and that's what I enjoy so much about shadow damage. The most important aspect is the one on your amulet, and that's the aspect of Disobedience. You gain 50% increased armor for 4 seconds when you deal any form of damage, and that armor gets transferred over to your minions. And this one is a truly stack to actually enhance the survivability of you and your minions in higher Nightmare dungeons. It has worked extremely well out for me, and on the amulet it actually gets supercharged by another 50%, so you end up with a 75% bonus armor, more or less constantly proccing, and you and your minions just being the absolute survival. Now for the ring number 2, you want to have the Ring of Mendon, and that is the absolute insanity for your minions. While you have 7 or more minions, you gain Lucky Hit, up to a 10% chance to empower all of your minions, causing the next attack from each to explode for 14,000 damage. Now, you won't have that one, obviously, early on. But as soon as you get it, put it on. Until you have this, you're going to actually take a simple one. And that is each time one of your summoning minions damages an enemy, they gain 14% attack speed for 3 seconds, up to 42%. And that is super good because your skeleton mages do damage, faster, damage, faster, damage, faster, more essence. So you can spam your abilities even more frequent. Now for the pens, I have been playing the aspect of the Heart and Bones. While you have 7 or more minions, they gain 20% increased damage reduction. And that's quite nice because it's just a flat damage reduction for your minions and has done plenty well. And for the gloves, if you find it, you want to have the Howl from Below, which truly changes the whole class. Instead of detonating immediately, Corpse Explosion summons a volatile skeleton that charges at a random enemy and explodes. Super cool because no matter where your corpses are, you can send them in. And then Corpse Explosion's damage is increased by 40%, and that's multiplicative. So every single multiplier applied to Corpse Explosion, making it deal up to 100,000, 800,000 damage. And the whole thing times 40% at the end of the day. So it's like amazing. Now you won't have that again, obviously, in the beginning. Here you can take the aspect of reanimation. Your skeletons gain increased damage while alive, up to 30% after 10 seconds. Since your skeletons are more or less always alive and don't really die with these aspects in the long run, and with the buffs you're putting on them, fantastic. You'll keep them continuously alive. Now, what stats are we looking for? On your main hand, intelligence, always good. Critical strike damage, fantastic. Vulnerable damage, super. And the main stat, when you're looking for any kind of damage stat, is damage to affected by shadow damage over time. So you can work with stun, slow, crowd controlled, but the main one, or the most important one, is this, because it's just damage to everything you do against opponents that are affected by the shadow damage over time you essentially continuously do. And then on every single other item that can have maximum minion life, you want to have maximum minion life. And on your offhand, also critical strike chance, because that works plenty well. But maximum minion life needs to be stacked. The more maximum minion life you have, the better it works. I need maximum minion life on my rings, on my offhand. The chest can have it as well. And that's a minimum to really have them later on with level 70 plus, just continuously survive in nightmare dungeons. Because you don't want to get stuck to just revive them the whole time. No, you want to be able to just absolutely have your Undying Legion go on. My helmet, for example, has 4 ranks in Decrepify. Ignore the aspect right now. I've been trying a different build, but it's the same helmet. The 4 ranks in Decrepify are actually useless because the original damage reduction and speed slow is not getting really much higher with more ranks in Decrepify. So heads up, do not take that one, but I'm stuck with a plus 1000 maximum life on myself to get myself to survive. And the total armor is extremely nice. 10% is huge, especially since we're working to increase our armor with the aspect of disobedience. Yes, I couldn't reroll the dexterity, so I'm kind of stuck with this, but dexterity is also fine for your Paragon board in the long run. This chest piece is perfect apart from darkness scale damage. And yes, it sounds weird. Why don't I want darkness scale damage? You do enough damage anyways, and all your multipliers are working multiplicative, plus your Paragon board is kind of reliable for more damage, but your equipment should help you to survive. Damage reduction from distant enemies, nice. Damage reduction from close enemies, awesome. Maximum life, good. And I wish the darkness skill damage here would be replaced by minion life to essentially make my minions survive more. And this is the Howl Below, for example, which actually says 40x increased damage. If you don't know where to get these advanced tooltips from, it's options, gameplay, and then activate advanced tooltips, because that gives you the more in-depth explanation on items. On your pens, and this one is the perfect pens I've found so far. Maximum life to me, 4 ranks into Corpse Explosion, yes, and then 20% damage reduction from enemies that are affected by shadow damage over time. All stats is always good. And then 7 or more minions, I get damage reduction. Now we can ignore the aspect because disobedience has to be on there. This has damage reduction from close enemies, really cool. Also damage reduction from enemies affected by shadow damage over time, perfect. And then 3 ranks to all corpse skills, which is the most insane thing ever because that's corpse tendrils and corpse explosion with another 3 ranks, and then 3 ranks to the amplified damage passive. That would be another 3 ranks on the cursed damage opponents take more damage, which is another 9%. Plus, well, you can overrank obviously your skills, making corpse explosion go up to plus 12 in total. Now with all of these items in our bag, we're ready to go for the Paragon board. And the Paragon board is quite easy to run down. You're going to be focusing on willpower, intelligence, and dexterity nodes. The beginning should always go over the right for the maximum damage. And we're not going to be filling out all the nodes because you're going to be taking what you need to get to the board where you need to be. Because you're going to invest your points to get more damage, intelligence, willpower. Then here, dexterity, we talked about, intelligence. And your very first glyph that you pick up is going to be the control glyph. And that one is really, really cool. We're going to level that up to 15 straight away. For every 5 intelligence purchased within range control, increase damage to crowd control targets. You constantly crowd control. But most important, you and your minions deal 10% increased damage to slowed or chilled enemies, multiplicative, or 20% increased damage to stunned or frozen. As you know, you constantly stun or freeze things. That needs 40 intelligence in the radius to activate. Now, you're not going to get that amount of intelligence in the very beginning. Right now, you would have 5, you'd have 10 already with a 15 radius. What you're going to do is you have here another 10 intelligence, so that's really easy to push this by another 10. And here you also have another 10 intelligence. So preferably you would clap this node and also this node because this gives you 10, 20, 25. And this one you only get as soon as you have this rare glyph up to 15. The multiplier, again, is not that important until you reach level 60, but around level 60, you have this on 15 with the glyph node taken down here. And then you only need to take another 5 intelligence because, again, 10, 20, 25, 30. And since I'm stupid, it's another 10 intelligence. And you can just clap these 2 nodes, essentially. That would be your first 20 Paragon points spent for an absolute good increase in damage. Now we're going to move up on the right side for more armor because your armor gets multiplicatively higher, which is amazing. And the first board we're going to add is not the Cult Leader board, and it's very important. Why? Because the Flesh Eater board is just so much superior. The Flesh Eater gives you 40% multiplicative damage increase as soon as you eat 5 corpses. And 5 corpses are eaten so fast. You turn the board 2 times to attach. Now here you have potion life and regeneration while not damaged. And here you have damage to injured enemies and critical strike damage. It is more or less the same if I go over here and back, or if I would go over the left side. Willpower, intelligence, willpower, damage to injured enemies, critical strike damage. And then we go over to critical strike damage, willpower, dexterity, intelligence, dexterity, and we take the Flesh Eater node. And here, straight up all the right over, try to take intelligence and dexterity nodes again, willpower, ignore every strength node you can. And now we're finally linking the Cult Leader board. Ignore the glyph in the beginning because we need to get to the Cult Leader board and turn this 2 times. Very important. Since with the Cult Leader board, you finally get the ultimate damage reduction for your minions. And you're going to work your way down here to get the damage reduction and finally get to the glyph, and it's the Dead Razor glyph. And that one is so beautiful. Paragon nodes within range gain bonus to their damage reduction modifiers. So you have bonus minion damage, which gets increased. And whenever your minions deal damage to an enemy, the enemy takes increased damage. So you can make yourself and your minions deal more damage. You'll need 40 intelligence close by to get that popping. That's not an issue, to be honest. You have 5 intelligence here. You take the minion damage node to get this done. Now, you kind of want to have this straight away with the 40 intelligence, but there's also something you'd rather want to have. So first important, take the damage reduction, and take the damage reduction. Now, you also would like to take the minion damage, but there's something more important to go for. And that is just straight up to the right, you take the intelligence because it's in the range, dexterity, intelligence. You go up here because there's a triple of intelligence to take. 1, 2, 3. So we're already at 20 out of 40. And then you're going to go over this for minion attack speed, minion damage, and minion attack speed. And then also up here, another minion damage. Because we need to get to the cult leader node, and most importantly also to the armor clad node to make our minions survive even more. So we're going sadly over a strength node here. I mean, probably if I want to ignore the strength node, I could go over the right side for willpower, dexterity, willpower, and just ignore the one strength. So we can go for int, dex, willpower, dex, int. Now finally, my minions deal increased damage for each type of minion you have active. That counts for Skeleton Warrior and Skeleton Mages. We don't have the Golem active. That's okay. It's 20 instead of 30%. Plus more dexterity, willpower. And here you're going to take everything. Maximum minion life, maximum minion army, minion armor, minion life, minion armor. And finally, everything you ever wanted is working out super good. That makes your minions survive. Now, you could go to take the last intelligence points, but there's something else you would rather take beforehand. So you're going to move your way down here through the dexterity and intelligence nodes, and you're going to link the wither board. And that is the final board you want to actually put there. All the way down here is wither, and you would like to have it. But most importantly, you want to have this glyph socket. So you're straight up going to work your way to the left, and you're going to take shadow damage, willpower, 10% shadow damage plus. And as we have 450 willpower, you should get that as well. More shadow damage, willpower, and then the glyph socket. And here you have a couple of choices. You can, for every 5 willpower purchase within range, you deal 2% increased shadow damage. That's nice. And whenever you or your minions deal shadow damage to an enemy, the enemy deals 2% reduced damage up to 10%. So that would be another flat 10% damage reduction. And the only thing you would have to do is clap some willpower nodes in the area. And as you know, you already have the willpower here. We have the willpower here, so that's already 12 willpower taken. And you just have to take a couple of willpower nodes close by. So you can move over the dexterity. And let's make this glyph level 15 for the right amount of area, because there's something you want to have, and that's shadow dot damage over time and shadow damage. And as we're going there, you can go for shadow damage, willpower, intelligence, willpower. So that's 5, 12, 19, 24 already. And you only need to take one single more willpower node, for example, down here, and you already get this activated, moving your way down to damage over time, and more damage over time, trying to fill the intelligence out. Now, here's also damage to elites and shadow dot damage, so that is something you would like to achieve. Here is damage reductions from enemies that are affected by shadow dot damage. Now, these are all bonuses for later on. Most importantly, now would be activating all your glyphs at this point. So we have this one activated already. That's good. We've taken the 40 intelligence, and this one to activate the bonus as well. That needs a 40 intelligence. So if you 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 20 intelligence. Now we have 1, 2, and then we need another up here, 3. And dexterity, intelligence, 4. That works as well. Now we also have the options, if you really want to activate another glyph, because there is quite some good ones. And up here, I like to take the exploit glyph. For every 5 dexterity purchase within range, you deal 1% increased damage to vulnerable targets. Dealing damage to vulnerable enemies, increase your damage by 1% for 10 seconds. And that is, again, multiplicative on top of that. So with the exploit glyph, you just do more damage. And in order to get there, we're going to just go up. That's 1 dexterity node. Then you take intelligence, intelligence, intelligence. You're going to work your way down. Dexterity node, damage to elites, damage to elites, damage to elites and intelligence. And then you can take dexterity, dexterity. And that is going to be 7, 14, 19, 24. And we need one more. Bibbidi bobbidi boo. You have already insane bonus to vulnerable targets and the overall activation going on. We have another 82 points left. So you notice there is a lot to spend. So you can start obviously filling out here for more minion damage. You can get a little bit more minion damage as well. This one is not worth it. That's Skeletal Warrior. And this is also not worth it. That's just some resistance to the mages. So these bonus damages are not the wave. I'd rather now start filling out everything for the better damage reduction. As much as I want to have more damage here, the more important one on the right is this to take. What we're going to do though is we're going to work our way down. Shadow damage over time, going all the way here, we take more dexterity and willpower, and then we can take damage reduction because that is an 8% in total. And we can also take here damage to shadow dot enemies and damage to elites. Huge. Now we could work our way down here to just take the 4% max life because it doesn't hurt. And then we're going to move our way all the way here for the wither node. And the last and final board we've been taking is only for one thing. And that is again, damage reduction. Work our way up here. And we're going to take the Scent of Death board. And we're only going to take the Scent of Death board to actually get Scent of Death. Because that's the best one. Scent of Death is, while at least 2 corpses are nearby, you get 50% damage reduction. And while no corpses nearby, you deal 15% increased damage. And that's what we're looking for. Just a flat damage reduction. Cool thing is we can increase our critical strike damage even more as we do critical strike damage. And we could also go for another 4% maximum life if we want to. So you have 2 choices here right now, survivability or bonus damage. Most of us probably go for the survivability. So you just go over the dex nodes. Again, willpower, take the 4% max life and get your Scent of Death, which is fantastic. And yes, we could also go for another glyph. We have here damage to injured enemies and we have another 100 armor, which really works nicely. So you can work your way all the way down here to take another 100 armor, and it's in total 200 armor plus, and we can take even more armor. Plus on the glyph socket, there's also Amplify, which grants bonus to all magic nodes within range, and enemies affected by curse skills take 10% X increased damage. And that's really, really nice because if you level this up to 15, it boosts your armor essentially up to 200 armor and 20 intelligence. So why not to have? As you actually do more damage to injured enemies, injured is 35% and below, to kind of finish everyone off with like super speed bursts. And now since you want to activate this, that would be 40 intelligence. We actually have only taken 1 intelligent node here close by, and there is not many in the area. So, I mean, you can just work this way down, right? Get as many intelligence node as you need. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we would need another one for 8. Bum bum. That would be 8 nodes with 14 points left. Now with the last 14 points, we could try to get even more. I mean, there's again, the damage to healthy enemies is nice. Damage to injured enemies and another armor is good. So you could just try to clap as many nodes as possible, because with the last 8 points, I might just be about able to reach this, since it's always very good to get all the double bonuses if you then have the stats to reach them. And then last but not least, you could squeeze out another 2% maximum life to really get there. And that's actually looks quite complicated, but it totally makes sense all the way to level 100. So far, we've made this up to level 90 essentially, and we've been kind of like at this point where we clap the wizard node, and now we need the last levels to move into the Scent of Death board. So you can imagine I am mostly here, and this is the rest I still need to add for the bonus. But it does already feel plenty amazing. Now, there's supposedly a huge update coming to Necromancer in the future, and I'll make sure to keep you updated. Until then, this will stay the ultimate guide. Now, if you're looking for more tips to level up after 50, and also 12 things that you should not miss out on, watch these videos.